So who is in the lead to take on Donald Trump in the presidential election? Joining me now is Brian Klaas. He is a political scientist at University College London and also a political columnist for the Washington Post. And we're also joined by the White House reporter, Ksenija Pavlovic McAteer. Welcome to you both. Ksenija, if I could start with you.
Yes.
This is about the race to take on Donald Trump. Who emerges from these two nights of Democratic Party debates in good form?
Last night, definitely Kamala Harris really stood out. Her approach was to show that if she can take on Joe Biden, then she can definitely take on Donald Trump. That aggressive approach really worked for her last night, but overall strategy, I'm not too sure how much is this going to work for her. The reason I'm saying this is because, my day job is to follow Donald Trump, and he is very aggressive. And I think as someone who is following this administration, I feel that this space for aggression has been exhausted. And the first night was actually very hopeful because we had candidates in front of us who were able to talk about substance, to talk about politics in details in a very elegant way. And I think that is something that is missing. And there is a great space for someone who is authentic, who can talk about politics in details and with substance to really make himself or herself known on a larger stage of the American election. So this is something that is very interesting to watch. And the first night definitely breakout was Julian Castro. He was someone who was not on anyone's radar, but he was very real and he spoke his own truth. And this is something that is very important in this incoming presidential election because they need to beat Trump with substance, with authenticity, but also with class, I believe, because there is lots of negative conversation going on for the past almost now 3 years.
OK, well, Elizabeth Warren, I think, by most counts, dominated the first night's debate. Now had the second. Who do you see as the leading contenders now?
Well, so Joe Biden went into this debate as the absolute frontrunner. I mean, by a mile, right? He was around 30%, and most polls put the second-place contenders between 15 and 20%. So he had a big lead going into it, and that meant that he had a target on his back. And the target was from all the candidates, but Kamala Harris really took advantage of it, and she drew some serious political blood against Joe Biden with some of his past statements. And this is the vulnerability he's going to face going forward, is that he has been on the record in American politics for 4 decades, and he was a progressive in the 1970s. That doesn't necessarily make him a progressive in the Democratic Party of 2019. And so the Democrats are going to continually poke holes in Joe Biden's record as a progressive by bringing up statements from several decades ago. And he's going to need a different strategy than the one he used last night if he's going to succeed.
What about Bernie Sanders, who, of course, was the runner-up last time to Hillary Clinton, Ksenija? Is he still a very active contender?
I believe so. He is going to put up the fight. I don't know if you have seen this morning because you're live on the show, but Trump already made comments at G20 about Crazy Bernie and Sleepy Joe. So it is very interesting to see that Trump is making comments on Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden and not saying anything about Kamala Harris, who came out basically as winner of the last night debate. So I think in Trump's view, those two are still his biggest opponents. So I would definitely think that Bernie Sanders is going to stay in the game, that he is going to come far in this election.
There was a lot of talk, of course, about Beto O'Rourke and about Mayor Pete Buttigieg. How have they done? I mean, are they still contenders?
So Beto was widely viewed as the biggest disappointment from night one. He had to have a sort of emergency call with some donors reportedly to sort of think, how can I resurrect my candidacy? Because this did not go well. Pete Buttigieg, I think, is still somebody who's a serious contender. He did very well last night. It's just a question of whether he's going to be the breakout candidate that can get beyond what he's at now, which is 6 or 7%. And the big question, I think, going forward is, you've got 20 candidates on stage over 2 nights. What's going to happen? How are the votes going to shift when that goes down to 5 or 6 candidates? How is it going to shift when it goes down to the final 2? And so I think that's the big question, is where do these people who have 2 to 3% support, do they endorse other people? Do they have sort of factions that start to emerge? And that's what we'll watch going forward.
I mean, we still got 6 months until the Iowa campaign.
Yes.
So is there going to be a shakeout of all these candidates between now and 2020?
This is a great question. So if you look at this period of the Republican nomination process when Trump was running, he was at 1% in the polls and Jeb Bush was at 22% among the Republican faithful. So obviously, I think it's important to remember that one debate this far out is not going to be necessarily the thing that determines who the candidate is. What I think is worrying for somebody like Joe Biden is the dynamic that the debate shows, right? That he does have a target on his back and he needs to have a better answer to what do you say when somebody comes at you with your past statements, which you may have changed your mind on, but you now have to defend as the candidate or the presumptive nominee. And that's the big question.
Ksenija, is anyone going to drop out between now and Iowa?
I know, I really cannot predict that, but I want to add something that these elections are also going to depend very much on the young voters. And we are talking about generational change, and last night we could hear this call for generational change. But what is important to be aware of here is that generational change should not be only surface level. It's not about just changing the cast. It's about also a shift in ideas. So to really have some progressive change in America right now, we need to allow for the candidates who can deliver that to shine through this election campaign. And that is the biggest challenge I think Joe Biden is going to face, because he still speaks from the shadow of Obama. And while he has lots of experience, he's not delivering very innovative politics right now. So this is why I believe other candidates have equal chance, because we were all laughing at Donald Trump and he won the election. So in the end of the day, it's very early to say I would agree with your other guess.
Okay, take a guess. I'm not going to hold you to it, but right now, who would you say is most likely to be the Democratic nominee, Ksenija?
Unfortunately, I think that Joe Biden, he has enormous support of the political machine, but we're going to see.
I would go with either Biden or Kamala Harris. I think that she is going to rise considerably in this contest.
Okay, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you.